I'm from San Francisco, and my folks were in show business. My Aunt Iris, who I admired immensely, was an actress in Hollywood. She played in Johnny Weissmuller's Tarzan and the Leopard Woman, Ride the Pink Horse with Robert Montgomery. She was on television, and I always looked up to her. And my other aunt was Harold Lloyd's secretary for a few years, and then I was a neighbor to Ozzie and Harriet. I lived across the street from them, went to school with David. Wonderful time growing up out there. In the neighborhood, you had actors like Barry Fitzgerald, Adolphe Maju. It was a nice time to grow up in Hollywood. The streets, even Hollywood Boulevard, just was spick and span. But I loved entertainment, and I was shy when I was a kid. And I used to watch my folks. My dad played the guitar, my mother sang, played the castanets. My dad's from Costa Rica, my mother's from Brazil, and they toured all over the country and played the Coconut Grove, all the big hotels. So as a shy kid growing up, I used to go and watch them, see all the crowds of people and how much their music was being enjoyed by the audience. And when I'd go to the theater and I'd see a Fred Astaire movie, I thought, oh boy, wouldn't it be great to be like Fred Astaire and dance like that? So I was always admiring people for their ability of acting or dancing or singing or whatever their vocation was. And so over the years, I thought, okay, I loved the movie so much that I got me a projector when I was young. And you used to go to the camera store, and then you could buy these little versions of, cut-down versions of movies and show them in your living room and entertain people. But then I started to find a lot of rare films in garages and people that worked at the studios. And then when I saw an ad in one of the, I believe it was the American Film Institute magazine, later on, when I got older, that Universal had burned 400 films. And I thought, oh no, gosh, all these films that I like and other people love, and they're burning them in a big field, and they thought they had no future value. And then as Hollywood changed, it wasn't the studio system anymore, which I loved. When you had, Louis B. Mayer running MGM and Darryl Zanuck at Fox and all the stars. And I used to go in the sound stages and see them building the sets for the movies. And I thought, wow, look at these guys and these craftsmen, sound people, all that. And I was just knocked out. And so then I started to collect. And I started going around showing films to different groups and even at your home. And then I saw how people were laughing and enjoying it. And I felt like I was kind of an entertainer doing that. And then you find rare films, then the articles are written in the newspaper. And then when I came up to Minnesota in 1969, Channel 5 had found that I'd had this large collection of mostly musical subjects like big bands and jazz and even classical. And they said, would you be a guest on our show either once or twice a month? And I said, well, what kind of a show? And I think it was called Dial 5, Jim Hutton and Jane Johnson. So one of the first times I was on, they called me up and they said, are you available? And they gave me a date and a day. And you'll be on with Ginger Rogers. Oh my God, Ginger Rogers. So I go down there and I meet Ginger. And in a way, we had a lot in common. I lived in Independence, Missouri for a while, and that's where she was born. And she kind of knew I preserved and restored a lot of old movies to save them from not being thrown out in the field like Universal did. And so finally, every month or two, I'd be on with Pat O'Brien, Fred Waring, Guy Lombardo, and I thought, oh my gosh, what am I doing on the show with these people? So then I got the bug. And finally, the shyness started to come out, and I started to think, as I would be on a TV show, I was on the Mike Douglas show, I always studied myself. So as time went on, I got more confidence, and then they started booking me around the country. I toured with W.C. Field's grandson. We went to all the colleges, and then I went on my own. And then over the years, I get calls from Hollywood, Bing Crosby, Eleanor Powell, all these movie stars are wanting me to find things, not necessarily movies like features, but short subjects. I'm going to San Francisco. Bing brings me into San Francisco. I'm in his home showing him things that he'd never seen, and he's laying on the couch. He had just injured his spine. He had fell off a stage in Pasadena, and he was singing to himself on the screen. He was like he wasn't hurt at all, and finally, after I got through showing him everything, he wanted everything I had, and I said I'd make that available to him. And the young lady that drove me there from San Francisco was a friend of mine. She said, well, are you going to sell him the movies you have? I said, no. He has things I don't have. I have things he doesn't have. So I said to Bing, I said, let's trade. And he loved that. And he pulled on this cord to summon his, I shouldn't say butler, but his house man that takes care of his house. Says, make anything available to Bob he wants from my collection. A lot of it was in bad shape, and so I had to work on it here in the Twin Cities at Pixel Farm downtown, and we went through every frame of every short, not just copy the film, and then we digitized it, and I saved a lot of his films. But the biggest thing was, I thought, well, after that it's all over. Catherine Crosby has me going places with her. Next thing I know, I'm staying in their mansion in San Francisco, and we become close friends, and the same way with a lot of the other actors. It wasn't just helping them and goodbye, I was cared about their careers. They were just wonderful people. Most of them are gone now. Frankie Carl, the band leader, Tex Beneke with Glenn Miller Orchestra, all these people I help. My purpose is this. In this world we're living in today, which is a lot of chaos, and I mean, it's just unbelievable what happens in the news every day. I grew up in the 1950s, which was a nice era, nice, clean neighborhoods, people, polishing their cars, just a wonderful time to grow up. And I want that back. And the only way to get that back is sometimes taking people like today in this theater and taking them back where they can reminisce and look at the screen. Now, I did a Bing Crosby show at Chanhassen Dinner Theater in the smaller theater, and this was so funny. When he was singing on the screen, I was watching the audience off to the side, and all the women were hugging their husbands and boyfriends. I said, yes, this is what I want. They're getting something out of it. They're going back and listening to good music, seeing wonderful songs, and just great actors. And I always throw out this one story because this is the one that changed me. I did a show up at the Heights. It was after Christmas, and it was snowing, and it was a blizzard. And it was the Great Tap Dancers. That was a show I put together. And all of a sudden, the door swings open to the front of the theater, and this little man comes in. He's about 93 or 94. And he says, is this where the tap dancers are? I said, yes, it is. And he says, oh, do you have Louis Dupron? Now, Louis Dupron was a dance instructor in Hollywood, very famous dancer, tap dancer. And he taught Margaret O'Brien, Don O'Connor, he worked with Shirley Temple. Well, he entertained this gentleman when he was in World War II with the soldiers out on the islands. He tap danced for him. And this gentleman became very good friends with him. And so it was snowing, it was horrible weather. So he's sitting in the first row, and I'm looking over at him as he's watching the movie. And I had two clips of Louis Dupron. And he's like this in the first row, and tears are going down his eyes. He takes off his glasses and wipes his eyes. And I thought, geez, why is he doing that? So after it was all over and everybody's leaving the theater, I walked him out, and just as we pushed the front door of the theater over, I said, "Excuse me." He said, I said, "Why were you crying?" Well, like I said, we became good friends, and he did so much for the troops on the island, entertaining us. And he said, "Thank you very much." And I said, "Well, do you have very far to drive?" And he said, "It's been worth every mile." And I said, "Well, do you live in Anoka or north of the city near the Heights?" "I live in Duluth. I drove through the storm tonight to come and see my friend." I got out in the car and I was just sat there and I thought, this is more than a movie showing. This isn't just a movie showing. This is bringing some meaning back to people. And that's what I think is needed today. As you can see today, these people that were here today, they applauded afterwards. I mean, where do you go and see that today? And so I'm not saying that movies are bad today, but I'm just saying that all these wonderful people we're seeing are gone. All that music that was written back then and still played, but I am so proud to have been part of that era. You know, if I had to pick when I wanted to be born, I was born right in the time when I really enjoyed it. The power of the motion picture. For instance, I'm over here with tears in my eyes when Roy Rogers sees his dad and his family. During the Depression, 80 million people a week went to the theater with their nickel to escape, to fantasize, to dream. And so this is what I feel is we need today, and to go back in time and make things special. Not just show a movie, but give them some little information. I quit my job. I was art director for Ellerby Architects for almost 10 years. One day I was looking out the window and I was 54 years old and I thought, I'm quitting. And I went upstairs and I said, I'm quitting. They said, you don't have to quit, you know, and I started the art department. I said, I'm going to pursue my passion. My passion has always been in movies, entertainment, Hollywood, making those movies come alive again, being special. And going into the schools. I go into the grade schools, high schools, colleges, to show them some of the entertainers of the past, like Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington, so they can visually see them and appreciate what the visual part of it, more than just a record. Record you can enjoy, but when you visually see Louis Armstrong, you want to see him more. I've been here almost 8 years. So it's like your own little theater in a way, and you're exhibiting what you want to show them and tell them about. We used to get 400 people a show at the Heights, and afterwards they'd applaud and stand up and applaud. Then I thought, yes, these are people that are starving for good entertainment again. You know, I always tell people, remember when you were young and you went to the Saturday matinee and you saw the cartoon, the serial, you know, the Western, or the Laurel and Hardy, Edgar Kennedy, Leon Arrow, all those wonderful shorts. Or just go see a double feature at your little neighborhood theater, you know, which had a newsreel and maybe a cartoon and whatever. And I thought maybe, I'm sure they would enjoy reliving that. What my favorite is, naturally I like It's a Wonderful Life, and everybody else does. But I'll be very honest with you. When I was a kid and went to the theater with my dad, I was knocked out by Arsenic and Old Lace with Cary Grant. And I do like also The Bishop's Wife with Cary Grant. And I really I laugh at all the character actors, James Gleason, Edward Everett Horton. I mean, you've got all these wonderful character actors in the movie that really help make the movie. When you have a cast like in Arsenic and Old Lace, and you have a lot of laughter, a little bit of scariness, Raymond Massey, Peter Lorre, you know, you've got all the ingredients of just a wonderful film. I went to Wichita one year and did an animation 2-hour show at their big library. And after it was over, a mother and her son came down. He was 9 years old. I remember this, it was very important to me. And the mother said, "My son hopes someday he can be a cartoonist or an animator. He really enjoyed your show." And I said, "Well, does he draw at all?" "Well, he traces out of comic books, you know, with tracing paper. And he draws a little bit in school, but not much." And I said, "Well, do you know anybody in Los Angeles?" And she said, "Well, I have a sister, I think, that lives in Encino." I think it was where it was. And I said, "Well, can you go visit her maybe a week or two? Chuck Jones from Warner Brothers has a class for young people, and about 9 years old up to maybe 14, 15 years old. And they're not just an hour or two, they last longer, and they're every other day, or you could be there for 2 weeks. And enroll him in that, and have Chuck work with him and tell him things and educate him. And see if you can do that, I think that'll help." "Well, thank you, sir," and they left. 9 years later, I come back to Wichita with a jazz show. And here comes this 18-year-old with a suit on, all dressed up, and there's his mother, and "We came to thank you." And I said, For what?" They said, "For giving us guidance a little bit, where to go and what to do." And he says, "Thank you, sir, so much." And I took classes when I came back and all this. I started Walt Disney next week. So, if you have a dream, no matter what you do, if you make pottery, if you take photographs, if you draw, whatever your dream is, develop it on the side from what your job is. And hopefully, like I did, I stepped out of the architectural into my dream. Everybody has something that they like to do. They may not know right away, but it's there. And I urge them to develop that through the years, and then maybe later on step out into that full time.
Thanks so much, Bob. Really appreciate it.
And I'll start out by showing you this, which was my first ever diary. I got this in when I was 8 years old, 1967. My grandparents gave me this, and I didn't know what it was. So, "Well, you just write your thoughts in it," and it's a daily diary. Here's my first entry, March 29th, 1967. "I brung home a spelling paper that wasn't checked." That's all I wrote. And I think the reason I brought it home because I misspelled brung. So I started collecting my own stories. Does anybody know what this is?
Yes.
This is my first ever tape recorder. And it actually had tape, and you recorded things. People still say, "Did you get a tape of that?" And of course, there's no tape anymore, but we still did. So I got this back in about the same time I was bringing home my spelling papers, and it was great because I think I got it for I bought it for my brother used. He bought it for $18. I got it for $12, so I got a great deal. And for whatever reason, how stories began for me is that I would interview people. But this is a short, like 1 minute. This is one of my earliest interviews. I was 12 years old, and I was interviewing my 4-year-old niece. I don't know what inspired me at that time. If it was Johnny Carson, I mean, I loved watching him. Actually, when I was little, they wouldn't let us stay up and watch Johnny Carson, but we'd listen through the vents upstairs. We could listen to Johnny.
Now it's time for Kid Talk with Lynette Gerwasik. What would you like to talk about, Lynette?
Lynette Gerwasik sing at Grandma's house, and Gary got the new record player. And how many records do you got, Gary?
Quite a few. What do you think of hot pants?
They're hot. They are really hot.
So that was where it all started in my youth. And so I continued to interview people. And I'd interview my siblings, I'd interview my grandparents. And I had a nice conversation with my grandpa, who was a German immigrant. We would talk about his garden. It was entertainment. Then my grandpa died, and my dad said, "Do you still have that interview with Grandpa?" I only had like 3 reels. I mean, I probably taped the Carol Burnett show over it, and it was gone. And it was kind of a gut punch, because I thought it was a reminder of how important people's stories are and how stories end. And I think it was then that I kind of started my video audio hoarding, where I didn't want to, if I captured someone's interview, I didn't want to lose it. I didn't want to dispose of it, because I didn't know if I would get to hear their voice again. And I've had people over the years come to me and say, the only recording I have of my mom is on my voice machine, or, we have this one little video, and it's, so people don't often think about capturing those things, because there's always going to be another opportunity. And there wasn't in that case, and so it became sort of my mission to kind of collect these things. And the other part of it was collecting images. So even though I started out with doing just doing audio, because that's all I had, this little tape recorder, I also started shooting pictures, because I had my other grandpa, who happened to be named Frank. He was a photographer, and he shot on slides. So we would go over to the grandpa's house, and he would pull out the slide projector, and it was like the early big screen. It was before big screens were big screens. We got to watch our childhood on the screen, and this is kind of thanks to my grandpa. Without him, I would not have pictures of myself. This is me, probably about 5 with my first baseball glove. As I continued through life, I continued to collect stories and take pictures, but I also became an adult and had to make a living. So I was finding other ways to use the interviewing skill to make a living and to entertain myself and others. And I was in advertising as a writer, but I also became a guy who did a lot of man-on-the-street interviewing. So I was always out, and I would literally, in many places, just be on the street with my microphone, and just, it teaches you, if you're not extremely extroverted, it teaches you how to become extroverted, because you have to get out and just say, "What do you think of where we're heading?" This was some of my early.
Never been to Flanagan Sports? Come on, let's go. So what is it about the loose hockey jock?
It's funny you ask that.
You'd think that loose and jock shouldn't go together.
Should go together.
Whoa, she says.
Oh yeah, that's nice.
Like clouds.
Luxurious.
It's softer than a baby's bottom.
You felt a few of those.
I have.
It's time again for the Media Play Challenge. You name an artist or title, and we'll see what we have here.
Squeeze 45 and under.
We're looking for Squeeze. Look, they got the new Squeeze, brand new. I've got. Looks like a dangerous machine. How long have you been working on this thing?
I've been working on them 5 years.
Just kidding. More. Where are you visiting from today?
From Bombay, India. That's a long flight to come to the Kennedy Space Center. Fortunately nearer than the moon.
Kennedy Space Center is just wonderful. It explains everything, and it gets you close to whatever you need to know.
So you got to see it yourself, because you just won't believe the size of it and the scale of things and everything else. It's just fantastic to see it.
You know, the original 7 Mercury astronauts, including John Glenn, lived, worked, and rocketed into history not far from the spot where this monument now honors them. Those astronaut heroes remember this part of Florida as something special. After a couple of hours here, we hope you'll feel the same. Hope to see you soon at Kennedy Space Center.
This particular video is kind of sort of a transition for me here from my friend who was a neighbor, was also friends with a Minnesota Twins pitcher. He's retiring, and we want to do a video to celebrate his career. So this is a wonderful opportunity to do something big, and I got, at that time, this was 2006, and I got to meet a bunch of the Twins players and interview them, and we put together this video that was played at his retirement, Brad Radke's retirement in Tampa.
I'm here with one of the pitchers for the Minnesota Twins. Like yourself, he's also known as a guy who can give up the long ball occasionally.
What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with giving up a long ball.
I don't know, but
You know, home runs are part of the game. I always looked at home runs as a fan friendly type of pitch.
So you were doing it for the friendly. I would say what I really feel about you, but I already got suspended 5 games this year for saying the F word.
I wanted you to help me out here. I got this old hat. This hat, and I've never worn it. I got it.
Champagne.
It burns, doesn't it?
It burns big time. That's why you have to wear goggles. If you don't wear your goggles, there's something wrong with you.
You guys all have swim goggles, or were they provided?
No, that was, I don't know who got those. That was kind of weak. That's cheating. You gotta enjoy that.
You gotta enjoy that burn, huh?
Yeah.
Go for the burn.
Your eyes burn.
I was watching you guys last night. I didn't know if I was watching a baseball team or a swim team. After doing that, I liked the experience, but I also thought, you know, you don't have to be a multi-millionaire to be able to have a story to tell. And I wanted to tell other people's stories, and this came about it's a sad story, but I was grateful to have been able to help a friend of ours whose husband was diagnosed with cancer. And it was quite serious, and he wasn't going to get better. And she's a strong person. She wanted me to come over and videotape the family being normal, just fixing dinner, the kids, they had young children. And I understand completely that he didn't want to do it. It felt morbid to him. He didn't want to acknowledge, and who does? Who would want to acknowledge what may be inevitable? You always want to think, and I suppose we all will think right up until that moment that we're going to get better, or things are going to change, or things are going to turn around. And unfortunately, for Robin's family, they did not, and he passed. And she wanted to honor him, and she said she came over to the house with a bunch of photographs, and she started telling stories about the photographs. And photographs are a fantastic way to you know, anytime you pull out an old picture, it really, there is 1,000 words there. And she started telling about what kind of man he was, what things they did together. And I said, hang on a minute, and I went and got a recorder. I said, let's capture these stories. And we made a video that she played at his celebration of his life. More people are doing that. They're instead of just having a funeral, they let some time pass so family can come from out of town and celebrate more all of the good things. It gave me a sense of purpose about collecting people's stories and the value of it. She showed me a value that I was not aware of.
But you know, life is interesting because sometimes when one thing bad happens, something good happens. Some of you know last year I wrote a book, and there were only 5 or 6 people whom I dedicated that book to. And that new thesis advisor was one of them. So he made a very, very positive impact. It was like a door shut and another one open, and for my whole life, he made an impact. So, you know, things happen.
Dear Aunt Phyllis, it's your favorite nephew, Kevin. I'm writing to thank you for the summer of '67.